My name is Clay Hutnack. I am a delegate from Elko County to the Nevada Republican Party State Convention. I would like to share with the public the basic events that took place at this now first installment of the Nevada State Convention on April 26, 2008, and why they are very disturbing to me. This letter to the editor of the Elko Daily Free Press will also be posted on YouTube to allow for easy circulation. The sections entitled Background and the State Convention put the last section entitled My Thoughts into perspective. If this is too long for your liking, please drop down and read this final section. I just want to show my credentials at this time on YouTube. The intent. The intent of this letter is not to divide the Republican Party, although there is always potential division when politics are discussed, but it is to make the public aware of the seriousness of what just played out at the state convention. Background. For electing presidential delegates, Nevada's legislature recently decided to adopt a caucus process. Many of us, probably all of us, were confused about how the process worked. It was explained to us as follows. 1. Meet by precincts. Elect delegates to go to the county convention. 2. Delegates meet at the county convention and elect delegates to the state convention. 3. Delegates meet at the state convention and elect delegates to the national convention. Here in Elko County, we elected delegates from precinct meetings to go to the county. At the county, we were told if we were interested in going to state, then we should put our names on a list. Near the end of the day, it was proposed that the first 75 could be delegates and the rest alternates in the order written on the list. The vote passed, and soon after, the county convention ended. The Tuesday night before going to the state convention, there was a central committee meeting. One of the items of business was trying to fill the probable vacant slots. There were fewer than 75 delegates and alternates that had responded with intent to attend the state. A few people with a desire to go attended this meeting and were elevated to potential delegate status. The state convention. The event started off just a touch behind schedule, but not much for such a big event. There were a few preliminary items, introductions, and speeches. The first item of real business was to adopt the rules. The party's proposed rules did not provide for delegate nominations from the floor. A small committee at the top of the Nevada State Republican Party had compiled slates of people to go to the national convention. Their proposed plan was for each delegate to have 2 votes. Each vote would be for an entire slate of delegates. The slate with the most votes would be the delegates, and the slate coming in second would be the alternates. To be considered for their slates, the delegates had to send in an application form provided by the party. The party needed to receive this form about 1 week in advance. Many delegates did not receive this form and were unaware of the proposed slates. Sending in an application did not guarantee a place on a slate. An attempt was made to change the proposed rules of the convention before conducting any official business. The proposed change allowed for delegate nominations from the floor. This would mean that if the rules were changed this way, every state delegate would have the opportunity to be nominated as an at-large national delegate. Each delegate would get to cast 25 votes, 3 votes for delegates specifically from their congressional district, and 22 votes for the at-large delegates that Nevada could send to the national convention. Here's the very abbreviated version of what followed. The convention chairman, Senator Bob Beers, began by saying that this would take too long and that everything was already prepared for the pre-chosen slate method. In response, one of the delegates notified the convention that there were high-speed printers and computers available that could print the new ballots in about 30 minutes. It quickly became apparent that the main battle of the convention would be over the national delegate selection process. A vote was taken whether to change the rules to allow for nominations from the floor. In fact, it was taken more than once. When the numbers came back, it was obvious that the change was approved by the delegates at large. There was a recess for lunch and an announcement made that if you wanted to apply or nominate yourself for national delegate, to do so before lunch had ended. When the convention reconvened, a speaker was presented to the body. He tried to convince the delegates to change their minds and go with a different method of slates. This proposal was rejected. From this point on, the main events were these: compiling a list of potential delegates for the congressional districts, voting on these delegates, voting on the platform, miscellaneous videos and speeches not pertaining to the business at hand, and the abrupt and unexpected recess by Senator Bob Beers. As the votes for these first 9 delegates were being tallied, it was becoming apparent that the overwhelming majority of the national delegates were favorable to Ron Paul. Senator Beers and the party leadership had seemingly recognized now that perhaps most of the other chosen delegates would also be favorable to Paul. So it seemed like Beers stalled the convention till 6 p.m. He then announced that the convention was recessed until further notice because the rental of the room had expired, and promptly left the building. It was quite chaotic, as the lights and microphones had been turned off. The time constraint issue had not been mentioned prior to this announcement. When the Peppermill Hotel and Casino was consulted, the management were willing to allow the convention to continue another 3 hours. After an appeal was made to Senator Bob Beers to return to the convention, a delegate named Mike Weber, who is well versed in parliamentary procedure and who has stated that he is not a Ron Paul supporter, volunteered to chair the meeting if there was a quorum. It took quite a while to get people calm and seated in a much of the time darkened room. When the count was taken, it was found that a quorum did not exist. It was about this time that the lights were turned back on. Again, this is the short version.